Morning, everybody. Welcome. I think today we'll have a fantastic speaker for sure. Excited to listen to Noel. And on behalf of Sherry and I, as co-chairs of this committee, as always, welcome. Certainly thanks to Sally for getting Noel to come on today and getting this together. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Sally, to give a brief introduction here, and then we'll go ahead and get started on this Thursday morning. Gosh, I'm trying to jump ahead already like it's afternoon. I don't want to get that far ahead of myself today.
Great. Well,
all right, go ahead.
I'm honored to have Noel on this call because I know how busy he is. I met Noel a few months ago working with Valley Against Sex Trafficking, and Noel is from Florida and also knows another friend of mine. So it's kind of a small world when you start thinking about these things, but Noel has been traveling back to Mesa and, well, the region. Gosh, I think he's probably here as much as he is in Florida now, but we're glad that he is. He's spending a lot of time working with multiple police departments. He's done presentations more recently with legislators and judges, and just really trying to, open eyes really to what's going on in the trafficking world. So Noel, I'm not gonna steal your thunder. You've got a lot. If you wanna talk about maybe your background a little bit and then just go into it, really this hour is for you. So please share your knowledge, and we'll have some time for questions too.
Sounds great. Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Glenn. Good morning. I'm Noel Thomas, the CEO of Zero Trafficking, and most certainly is a pleasure to be here. Still waiting for my coffee to kick in. Was up late listening to Senate bills, and ours was the very last one on the docket last night. So a bit of a late night. I want to thank you for the opportunity to kind of share a passion of mine to fight human trafficking. And I think it's important to kind of know the context of how I got here, because sometimes it seems so unattainable for people to fight human trafficking. So it all starts, I was in a touring rock and roll band a long time ago, traveling internationally, and got to go to Europe and Scandinavia and all over. And I remember in 2007, I got a flyer on human trafficking. I said, "What is human trafficking?" I had known about homelessness and clean water issues and poverty and these sort of things, but at the time I didn't know much about human trafficking. And I read this flyer that there was 27 million people enslaved around the world. And I thought, wow, how can I begin to use this band as a platform to raise awareness for human trafficking? So we used the band as a platform. Fast forward a little bit, I went to India and did a short documentary on children in the brothels of India. And it was while I was in the streets of India that I saw law enforcement selling this, little girl into trafficking. And I thought, wow, the one person that you should be able to trust is your law enforcement, and they're facilitating the sale of this girl. And a quote around that time really struck me, and it's by Edmund Burke. He said that all it takes for evil to prevail is for good men to do nothing. And so I knew kind of on the streets then that my life was going to change quite a bit. From there, I came back and started a nonprofit, raising awareness for human trafficking, speaking as often as we could, churches, community groups, schools, everywhere that would kind of listen to this message that human trafficking was modern day slavery. It's a $150 billion industry that exists today. From there, I ended up being the statewide anti-trafficking coordinator under Rick Scott in Florida. So working with the Department of Children and Families, I helped set up the safe houses, manage appropriations, work with task forces. And this is when I saw an incredible need on law enforcement parts and the community's part to have better data to fight human trafficking. So at the time, they were manually clicking on back page ads to find human trafficking victims. I got to go out on a raid with them and just watch this process from start to finish. And I went to school for entrepreneurship and business. And the first thing about entrepreneurship is that you look for a problem and then you, the simplest way, provide a solution to that problem. And so the problem that we saw was that law enforcement didn't have the data, the communities didn't have the information necessary to disrupt human trafficking. So that was kind of the genesis of Zero Trafficking. My co-founder, best friend of 24 years, first bandmate, ended up going to law school and then military intel. And it's amazing how sometimes your path and your step seems ordained. And so he's studying intelligence. He goes to law school. He works for a private equity firm. And long story short, in 2018, we were working with the Department of Defense and found connections from human traffickers to known drug trafficking organizations. That put us on a Pentagon roadshow and talking to other government agencies. We got funded as a company and quit our jobs and now do this full time. And our team has grown to a total of 30, both part-time, full-time, and volunteers. And we are zealots for disrupting the modern day slave trade. So now we're here in Arizona, and Arizona is quite the hotspot for human trafficking, as you can imagine. You've got the border issues right now, where you've got cartels bringing individuals over. You've got fentanyl, and you have this convergence of illicit massage brothels and human trafficking. So this creates a really unique opportunity in Arizona for the bad guys. But the good news is that your law enforcement in the state has one of the best responses that we've seen nationwide. And so there's some tools that are here in Arizona that are really unique to Arizona in the fight against human trafficking, finding the transactions of bad guys and having dedicated units, even at Mesa Police Department, their heat unit, which is dedicated to fighting human trafficking. And so this is very unique to see that. And I know that everyone on the ground is working hard to combat this. So just a little bit of stats. There's 32 million people enslaved. This is $150 billion a year industry. And then to bring it home in Mesa, there's anywhere between 150 and 180 illicit massage brothels. And if you were to kind of put an estimate to how much on average these places earn, we take the idea of 4 individuals full-time, and that basically puts it at around $1 million a year. So you have 150, $180 million that is going to fund organized crime. And a lot of that goes back to China, to Mexico, Dominican Republic, and other areas to support these threat groups. So for us, to get ahead of that, we equip communities with the tools to have a response to fight back. And everything that I saw when I was working as the statewide anti-trafficking coordinator is, we have to have an edge over these criminals because they're clever. This is their line of business. Human trafficking tends to be one of their least risky lines of business because there just aren't the resources necessary to fight it all the time. And so we do a lot of equipping of law enforcement with training. We train them in military methods of how to find organized human trafficking rings, how to disrupt those rings. We provide them with the data necessary and the analytics to begin to really understand the problem. And not only the problem of human trafficking, but how it overlaps with, say, fentanyl overdoses or fentanyl hotspots. We can literally take all that information that we find on these human trafficking networks and plot it on a map and show where these hot zones are so that strategically, communities can begin to respond with the resources in pinpointed areas. So it's not a scattershot response. And the last thing that we're looking to do is put 10 analysts in the state of Arizona to help disrupt human trafficking. Just to kind of give a comparison, in Florida, we had one full-time dedicated analyst to human trafficking for the entire state. And as you can imagine, there's Florida being number 3 for human trafficking in the United States. Their job was extremely busy. And that's nationwide, mainly because a lot of resources go to the war on terror and the war on drugs. And so now we're trying to bring the fight to human trafficking. And by doing that, we're looking to bring about 10 analysts here to Arizona. So one of my other favorite quotes is by McChrystal, and he said that it takes essentially a network to defeat a network. And this is what gets me excited because, you know, if you go back to 2007, I was playing in a rock and roll band, right? Whoever would have thought that I would be leading this, boutique intelligence firm that disrupts organized human trafficking. But those that have kind of been in it for now, a decade or 5 years have similar stories. They heard about human trafficking. They were inspired and said, what can I do? Step one, and it's kind of developed into that lifelong passion that emerges over time. But this quote from McChrystal where he says, it takes a network to defeat a network. This is the opportunity for communities to be the eyes and ears, to work with law enforcement. So not only are we working with law enforcement, Department of Defense, but we also work with businesses, retailers, transportation, and other companies. These human trafficking victims and human traffickers are people. And so they have the same logistics getting from point A to point B. So they got to go to Starbucks, right? And they've got to have a hotel to stay at. They've got to rent cars or take Ubers or fly on planes. And so really human trafficking, as we map it out, touches about 19 different industries. And those 19 industries make up a good portion of the community. So what we're doing in Arizona is building this network out of law enforcement, of businesses, of schools, of individuals that are passionate about fighting human trafficking, to be the eyes and ears, to bring the resources, to everyone kind of bring their piece to the puzzle to fighting human trafficking. And I'm very excited with the progress that the state of Arizona has made over the last few years, and where we're going as a movement. So I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of share this and let you a little bit into our world. I wasn't sure if there was any questions, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask them.
Noel, can you talk about the different types of trafficking?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's 3 main types of trafficking: labor trafficking, sex trafficking, and organ trafficking. And all of them are exactly as they sound, but with different nuances, right? So sex trafficking, the kind of like basic threshold to prove sex trafficking is force, fraud, and coercion. And so you have a lot of sex trafficking into the commercial sex trade, but it could also be online. It could also be via adult entertainment of all different sorts. So there's a lot of nuances to the sex trafficking part. Same thing with labor trafficking. It's not just agriculture or some of the traditional kind of means of labor trafficking that come to mind. Could be illegal fishing, illicit mining in other countries. It could be that individuals are brought over thinking that they're going to work in a legitimate massage place or as a nail tech. They get over here, their passports are taken, they don't speak the language, and so they're not in control of their travel documents or movement. And so they might actually be labor trafficked into prostitution or the sex trade. And that's kind of an important nuance in trafficking as prosecutors look to expand how they think about human trafficking. One other interesting one that just came to our attention in the last month or so are individuals that are smuggled over. So it starts out as human smuggling, and when they get over, they owe a debt to the coyotes, and they become indentured servants where they have to steal from big box retail stores. And so the big box retail stores bust that individual, but they're never working up the chain or even realize that they're a victim of human trafficking. So today I'll be talking to a bunch of retail execs about how indentured servitude and labor trafficking might be occurring in their stores, and some of the things to look out for so that they can not punish the person that's being trafficked, but actually go after the criminals.
Noel, do you have your map, that overlay that you could share?
Yes, let me pull that up quick.
I think it's interesting, but it kind of tells a good story when you see that visual.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's see if I can share my screen here. Okay, can you see my screen?
Uh-huh.
All right, so what you're looking at here is a map of Mesa. You might recognize some of these strips, but this is about 150 to 180 illicit massage brothels that are here in Mesa. And so as we begin to talk to law enforcement, the counter narcotics groups, there seems to be a trend, a co-location trend in these kind of hot spots right here where you see a lot of the red dots, where there's fentanyl overdoses and fentanyl coming in. So part of what we're trying to do with this map is not only show the extent of the problem, but its connection to other issues that are relevant. So how close are these dots to, say, school districts, or how close are these dots to where the fentanyl overdoses or surges are at? So that's kind of an example of one of the things that we do with the intelligence data that we collect, is that we map it out and tell this visual story of what's happening in people's communities.
Considering we have about 170 square miles in Mesa, having that many massage parlors in Mesa that are in this line, it's kind of scary.
Yeah, one of the overlays that I want to do with this is how many Starbucks are in Mesa, and compare that to the amount of illicit massage brothels that are.
So can you talk about how you connect the dots? I mean, I know that you've been watching something going on in Glendale, but that it's also related to other parts of the country.
Yeah, connect the dots as far as the criminal organizations.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in addition to pulling all this data and intelligence for certain areas, we have, artificial intelligence that goes out and scrapes a bunch of data. But in addition, we've got analysts that are trained in military intel methods, and so a lot of this information is then verified and built out by hand by our human analysts. But it takes a close partnership with law enforcement to actually begin to take these down, because there's a lot of things that we can't do, right? We're not going to kick down doors. We don't look at bank transactions and that sort of thing. We know how to find the bad guys fast, but law enforcement has to come in and work with us as a partner to take them down. And that's when the synergy in this public-private partnership really works well, is we tee up the front end very fast for them so that they can do the things that only they can do.
So we have, I'm trying to look, we've got PD and fire and a hospital and a transportation company and an ambulance company all on this call. I'm assuming that those are all some of those industry that you talk about being, you know, kind of connected to this, right?
That's exactly right. You know, a lot of the first responders, so medical and law enforcement, are going to interact with the victims at some point if they get hurt or they see something that's off. A lot of times it's the first responders that they get the first sight of them. In addition, you know, we were able to find one of our largest human traffickers via transportation, and he was renting a car from Enterprise and got a ticket, and that ticket was posted publicly in that county, and that gave us the real name and attribution to this human trafficker that we were looking at. So, you know, like I said before, they've got to get from point A to point B, and in some ways they're almost better than UPS in moving product. Nogales kind of being the super highway, if you will, of drugs and people. But yeah, those are some of the logistical challenges that they face when they're moving, you know, a person from point A to point B. They have to rely on a lot of times the infrastructure that the drug trafficking organizations have created. So the same stash houses, the same trucking companies, the same routes, if you will. And so that's the opportunity for us to really exploit those logistics chains and find them in their logistics.
So Noel, Michelle Coldwell is on this call right now. She is from Senator Sinema's office, and she has been awesome to participate in all of our aging calls. Pretty much every single month, we have the opportunity to, well, put questions and concerns in front of her that she takes back. What would you ask from that office? Michelle, if you're available, can you, there you are. Maybe we can ask Michelle to get some help for us.
Sorry, it's landscaping day and my dogs go insane. I'll just be on mute, but I'm listening.
No worries. I missed that first part. Are you with the legislative committee?
Senator Sinema.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. So part of what we're asking our representatives and senators, we've talked to, you know, Rusty Bowers, we've talked to Gowan, and several others on both the Senate and the rep side, is that this is an issue that affects human lives here in Arizona. It affects our communities. And so the first thing is that there's got to be more awareness to the footprint of organized crime. I think there's a lot of organizations that are doing a great job raising the awareness of the victims that are being trafficked. And thank God for the nonprofits that are out there that are providing victim services and helping with victim identification. The other side of the coin that we're trying to help with is identifying these organized networks, the criminal networks that operate as a business. And so I think that there's a lot of awareness to be done about that. A lot of our law enforcement trainings, this is the first time that they're hearing, wow, this might be connected to broader organized crime or have cartel connections and that sort of thing. And giving them the tools, the financial investigative tools, the open source intelligence tools to be able to go after it. So I think it starts with awareness, one, really understanding the problem, doing the research necessary to find the problem in our backyards. And then I think it takes a whole of government approach to really begin to defeat this problem. It's not one group. It's not, you know, one company like ours. It's not one law enforcement agency. It really does take the entire community committed to disrupting the modern day slave trade to begin to make a dent. And that's the message that we're trying to get across, that it takes really a network to defeat these networks.
Yeah, the senator actually sits on the Homeland Security Committee. and actually chairs a subcommittee on the border specifically. So we've done a lot of work around what you were saying, tracking the money. So the illicit financing of terrorism and everything like that, which plays into the cartels and the sex trafficking. I think, Sally, there was a group that met a couple of years ago pretty regularly about sex trafficking specifically. I don't remember what that group was called.
It's Valley Against Sex Trafficking. We're still meeting. Yeah.
Because I used to go to that meeting as well. It doesn't fall into healthcare anymore, so it's not in my realm anymore. But there was a lot of great work being done around there, and I remember taking back a lot for that illicit finance of terrorism legislation to the senator. So it's definitely something we're aware of and trying to help crack down and track that financing part of it, because it is so important. If they don't have the money, they can't complete the acts. So it's definitely something we're aware of on the Homeland Security Committee.
That's incredible, and you're exactly right that it is crippling them in the financial infrastructure that keeps them from operating. So thank you for the work that you're doing and your team's doing on this.
So Michelle, speaking of financing, there is a need obviously to finance the folks like Noel's group and others that are doing, that work. So if there's anything that, your team can assist with, that would be gratefully appreciated.
Absolutely. And I'll throw my email in the chat box as well, because I'm sure you guys are applying for grants all of the time through the Department of Justice grants and everything available on this kind of stuff. So anytime you guys are applying for a grant, reach out to me. We'll get you a letter of support.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you very much, Michelle.
Thanks, Michelle. Noel, there is a question in the chat box that says, what can the layperson do to help break the cycle or support the efforts that you and your team are putting out?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I think the first thing is, for me, when I started at Ground Zero in 2007, I literally knew nothing about human trafficking. And so I think the first kind of challenge is just getting as much education as possible. And thankfully, there's several good reports that have come out of the National Action Plan from the White House about a year ago. And it was a real collaborative study into human trafficking and what we can do to disrupt organized trafficking. So the National Action Plan was done on both sides of the aisle, and it was a collaborative effort to find real solutions to fighting human trafficking. That's a great place to start, especially from an organized element. And two, you'd be surprised just how much comes out of just conversations like this, where we're saying, hey, organized crime is looking to profit off the sale of individuals. A few of our investors, just through the courses of our conversations, have come across victims of human trafficking in their everyday and said, hey, this looks off, we're going to say something about this. So awareness is definitely the first kind of key, and especially this awareness of how organized crime operates. And then the second kind of step is, for me, was looking at the talents and kind of my degree and background and how I could begin to even use that as a way to solve this problem of the inefficiencies in the technology. And so that's kind of where it starts from. But if you're looking for kind of more information about our company too, or want to reach out to us, zerotrafficking.com. I'll drop that in the chat. We can't help you directly. We know the nonprofit or individuals locally that can and can always point you to one of our partners as well. And then on top of that, there's a lot of great nonprofits that you can give to, and just to make the distinction, we are a for-profit defense firm, and so we connect with nonprofits, we partner with nonprofits, and people that are getting involved, we try and point them to trusted partners to donate to. And Valley Against Sex Trafficking is one of them. International Justice Mission, Children at Risk. These are some really great nonprofits that have proven themselves and are trustworthy nonprofits.
Great. Tom, did you have anything from PD? We met with Chief Cost and Assistant Chief Bellows last week and talked about really focusing more on the illicit massage parlors.
Right. Yeah. So, Sally, you know I have a lot to say on this.
I know you do.
For the group and for Noel, I was the commander over criminal investigations, which hosts our heat unit. So the human exploitation and trafficking is what that acronym stands for. And I worked it for 2 years. And out of all the areas within that division, the heat unit was the one area that I really drew my focus, drew my attention, because I didn't realize how much I'd been exposed to trafficking throughout my 25-year career. You know, and just to kind of put some visuals out there, I mean, everybody knows, and you know, I don't want to say the old days, but 20 years ago, 25 years ago, street prostitution was, I don't want to say it was common, but you could find it in West Mesa.
That's right.
And I was working basically a vice unit, we called it SCAT at the time. And we'd go out and we would see these girls walking and we would proposition them. And once we had an agreement, we would arrest them for prostitution. And you always look at the prostitute as the girl who's being prostituted as the suspect. But the reality is, as I look back, I realized in conversations with them, many of them, they didn't grow up here in Mesa. Some of them were from California. Some of them were from the Northwest, but they were being moved by a handler, right? You've heard the term pimps. You've heard it, you know, we've talked about organized crime, but that's basically what it is. Organized crime is any group of 3 people or more that conspires to commit crime. And we dealt with human trafficking back then. Now you don't see those people you don't see the victims on the streets walking anymore because they don't need to, because of the invention of the internet, social media, websites, messaging. So human trafficking comes across in all different forms. Sex trafficking comes across in all different forms. And the border is certainly an issue. All borders, the entire border, and I mean that from the port of Los Angeles, where we have thousands smuggled in every year that go into the human trafficking, the sex trafficking industry across the country. Many of the massage parlors that Noel talked about in Mesa, I know when I was there, we were counting down. We had about 140 that we thought we really needed to focus on. The problem is, and to answer the question, what can you do? The problem is that the red tape, I guess would be the best way. We don't have very stringent or very strict laws from a business licensing standpoint, from a criminal activity standpoint, that addresses much of the activities that go on in so many of these businesses. The other problem is, and to go to Noel's point about the organized crime, is even though you saw a map of the Phoenix Valley area there with Mesa, you saw dots all throughout the valley. And I can assure you that the people that own the massage parlor at Country Club in Southern are tied into massage parlors at Superstition and Baseline, 27th Avenue and McDowell. There's a huge network. And the way we do that is really, we try to identify commonalities. And much of that is through their business licensing applications. You find out who their accountants are, and that's how we start tying down and figuring out where the money trails are. But the money's obviously, just like in drugs, right? Money's being laundered. And what's one of the best places to launder money here in Arizona? Real estate. So that creates a whole nother series of issues for us. But I think the biggest issue, to answer the question, I think it was Lori that asked, what can you do locally? All of you, don't think it doesn't exist. Guarantee if you have kids, if you have friends, somebody knows somebody who's been trafficked or who's been victimized. You've all seen the sting operations we do. They're in the media, they're in the news when we're arresting people for soliciting sex with minor children. It's because we can control that. There's obviously no minor children involved, but there's a lot of people right here in our backyard that are looking to exploit others. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, is probably the greatest evil I've seen in my 26 years. So I think the pressure on your representatives, both at the local level, the state level, the federal level, Department of Homeland Safety has been a tremendous resource for us at Mesa. When I was there, we established the East Valley Trafficking Task Force because we knew as agencies collectively, we had to work together because of the connections that all these different massage parlors had and that these organizations had, these criminal organizations. It's important that we have the resources, and quite frankly, we don't. I mean, I think I had Sergeant Lean and 3 detectives at the time, you know, and for us, for City of Mesa, we probably need about 3 squads, not 3 detectives, but 3 squads. I mean, if we really wanted to attack that problem, and they could be repositioned down the road. But you know, to Michelle Coldwell's comment, with the subcommittees, I would love to see, you know, the COPS grants that came out years ago, trying to focus on community policing. It would be awesome to see some sort of grants being provided to municipalities to fund specifically human trafficking efforts. Because I can tell you now, there is no lack of work to be done. The work is enormous. So anyway, those are my 2 cents.
That's exactly right. And you know, the heat unit is by far one of the best in the country. So to have that resource in Mesa, where law enforcement has dedicated a whole unit to it, is a great start. And to echo, I mean, this is an issue of resources, and we saw this in Florida. You know, this one analyst that's supporting the entire state, or you'd have one person in a large metro that was running sex crimes, vice crimes, and human trafficking, prostitution. And so it's just not enough. And I think part of it is that change in focus, that this is a priority. We're going to start putting resources behind it. We are going to start putting manpower behind it, and we will begin to tackle it. So,
and if I may just add this last point, what it really comes down to is how much value do we as a society place on life, right? When there's a loss of life, it's tragic, no doubt. You know, different circumstances. I've done my share of notifications and sat with families and cried with them. But here we have people that we know, some of them are children of friends of ours, students with our own children, that their life, they're losing their life. They're basically becoming a shell because they're being victimized.
That's right.
On a regular basis. So to me, that's a much greater tragedy, that they have to live, you know, with such a sense of loss of purpose or value.
Can you guys talk a little bit about how the fentanyl right now has become such a big part of this?
Yeah, so prior to going to criminal investigations, I was special operations, where we have our organized crime, which deals with the narcotics trades. Fentanyl has started coming into the communities probably about 5 to 7 years ago. So obviously, well before most people were to recognize it. It was initially used to cut or dilute, if you will, the pure heroin, pure cocaine. But now in itself, it's become somewhat of a desired drug. And it is so dangerous because the quantity needed to be considered fatal is very small. You know, there are a lot of people that we come across that are drug induced, that are acting erratic, that are being aggressive, and the fentanyl hasn't kicked in yet, but once it does, in many cases, we lose those people because the impact is so great on their organs in a short time, 30 minutes or less. So it's obviously a serious issue. You know, opioids were a serious issue, but opioids have been a serious issue for 20 years. I think 4 or 5 years ago, they started to get some attention, but it all comes from prescription medications. And fentanyl also is that's another source for the fentanyl into our society. You if you have prescriptions, or if you know anybody that has prescriptions in their medicine cabinet, pain pills, whatever, and there's teenagers in the household, be wary that, a lot of these kids will bring prescription meds to school that they get out of mom or dad's medicine cabinet. And in some cases, they do the drugs at school. Some cases, they sell them to make a little extra cash, not thinking that they're a drug dealer. But that's kind of how it starts at the younger ages. And then it starts getting introduced through more established networks, drug trades, hand-to-hand, dealing with a lot of the organized crime syndicates that we dealt with back then. We could order 50 keys of heroin, or we could order 20 keys of fentanyl and have it within 3 or 4 days, knowing it was coming from south of the border. And it was almost like a guarantee. I mean, it was that easy to get. So I don't know, Noel, if you have anything reference your work with that.
Well, that's exactly right. And sometimes it's very hard to see the line between prostitution and human trafficking, and it's our stance as a company, and a bit controversial, but the idea is who really grows up thinking that they want to go into prostitution when they grow up. And usually, it's by force, fraud, and coercion, oftentimes when they're under the age of 18. And so when we see them now at 21, 22, 25, we think, oh, wow, this individual has chosen this life of prostitution. And because they're hooked on drugs like fentanyl and now continuing to engage in prostitution to pay for their fentanyl habit, we say, oh, this person's a junkie, and the truth of it is that you don't know the history and the backstory of this individual that you're now seeing on the streets many years later. And that's kind of one of the mindsets that we're trying to change. And obviously there's a lot of pushback on that, but I think that a lot of times there is the control of an individual. There is some force, fraud, and coercion. Some clever prosecutors are now saying that the fentanyl and drugs are a form of that force and coercion into the crime of the sex trade. And so with that kind of caveat, I'll say that we came across an individual who was running away from home and was connected in the Mesa and then broader Maricopa County area. And family had reached out for help. Law enforcement was really helpful. And we had some information on this girl's, we would say trafficker, others might say pimp, but his title in his profile was, and it's hard to even get this out, was break a bitch college. And that was his main profession. And so this girl, in her early 20s, went missing. We managed to help arrange a meetup with law enforcement, with the dad, and with this girl. She ran out of the car, was so excited to see her dad, sees him, and then realizes that he's trying to get her out of the sex trade. And she was hooked on fentanyl. And she said, if I don't get my next dose, I'm going to die. And so she was out for 2 hours and then went back. And law enforcement can tell you hundreds of stories just like this. It becomes overwhelming, right? To even know what to do. And from our perspective, it's understanding how these crimes intersect and nexus each other. Drug problems overlapping with human trafficking. And if we're really going to make a dent in this, we have to cut off the head of this snake in the finances and really start hitting them hard in the finances. One of my favorite scriptures as it relates to this concept is says that the wealth of the wicked is stored up for the righteous. And so we need to take the wealth, the ill-gotten gains of these traffickers and begin putting it back into community programs, putting it back into law enforcement, putting it back into the nonprofits that are working with these victims, and start building the infrastructure of a counter trafficking movement. And so that was a long-winded response to fentanyl, but one that's very personal, because our team worked for about 48 hours around the clock to make this meetup happen, only for the girl to go back. And you know, everyone sees this on a daily basis, but for us, it was kind of a deviation of what we do as a company, and we actually got, you know, kind of hands-on in the process, and got to see kind of some of these other issues that are intertwined with it. And the last point to that is that I think that there has to be a change in mindset of how we look at prostitution and the sex trade, and that this isn't the first option and dream of these individuals, that there's a lot of force, fraud, and coercion along the way that is bringing them into this life. And it's easy to become jaded when you see it on your street corners. It's easy to become jaded when you see this as a daily thing, but to, as humans, have empathy to the background of this individual and where they came from.
Anybody have any last questions? This is great information. I appreciate it. And Tom, thanks for chiming in. You know, PD's really been involved and been good partners in all this.
Yeah, no, thank you, Noel, for this morning. This was a great session to have and to hear, and certainly a very disturbing discussion to listen to, and the magnitude of this issue that's out there, and not only in Mesa, but around the valley and around the country as well. So appreciate your efforts to try and thwart these thugs that are out there that get innocent people, you know, roped into this. If there's anything, you know, we can do as a chamber, certainly, you know, we're always happy to help. This committee has a pretty good cross section of health care related folks on it, and first responders. So, you know, these types of issues, you know, not only the chamber as just the business perspective, but from the members, right? We're all interacting in different verticals every day, and we don't really realize the places we go to could be a hub for trafficking, Walmart or Starbucks or you name it. It's been very eye-opening this morning. So thank you for your time.
Spring training games.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you all for taking the time. You know, I know I've given a lot of negative information, but the positive is that the state is committed to this fight against human trafficking. You know, and I was up late listening to these appropriations bills, and they're looking to push, you know, funds to increase the resources for this. And I think that the issues along the border has also highlighted some of these tangential issues with human trafficking and drugs and cartel activity. It's an uphill battle, right? But we're now doing these kind of meetings daily, and it's 15 people here, it's 100 people here, 200 people here, and slowly we begin to build a movement. So there is hope, and I appreciate everyone taking the time to listen how we can fight this all together.
Debbie, did you have a question? Did I see your hand up? No. Okay. All right. All right. Thanks, Noel.
All right. Well, thanks, Noel, on behalf of our group here. So appreciate your time, and have a great Easter weekend.
Likewise. Thank you all for taking the time. Talk to you soon. Okay. See you.
Thank you, Noel. Thank you very much.
All right. Sally, Sherry, anything else? We committed to this for our agenda today, but we have a couple minutes left for any open items or loose items, or any updates from the group. We got Michelle on. If there's anything up going on in DC, maybe to bring us in the loop on.
Yes. So as you can imagine, most of the focus has been on the implementation of the most recent American Rescue Plan. We got a lot of good things in there. We got PPP extended and expanded, I believe, to the 501c4s. So that's exciting news. Also direct support to cities, which is also huge, because as you know, Arizona is a big tourism relying on a lot of sales tax rather than like income tax and property tax and everything like that. So this should help out cities and their budgets. One of the big things I wanted to point out is for those with clients on Social Security waiting on their economic impact payments, those should start going out to Social Security recipients the end of this week, beginning of next week, depending on how they get their payment, whether it's direct deposit or a check in very rare cases still. So that's the biggest news right now, is just working on getting all the implementation of the tax credits that were involved. The IRS has some heavy lifting to do to implement all of the great programs that were included in this package, like the child tax credit and how you can get that in payments over the year starting in July, rather than as a lump sum, kind of help out with income for people who are unemployed right now. But that's going to be a big lift for the IRS. So we'll see how implementation goes. As you can imagine, the IRS is very backed up right now. They're still working on 2019 tax returns. So we're kind of trying to prod everybody along on implementation. So that's kind of what I've been focused on. Also, vaccine rollout. I'm sure you guys see the numbers all the time, but it's getting better. We're getting more and more. This is the first week, I believe, that counties have been reporting that they got more in delivery than they have previously. So we are starting to see a ramp up of getting more vaccines available across the state. Maricopa actually has a phenomenal vaccine program. The state site is very frustrating and crashes all the time. But if you guys have people looking for vaccines, I always direct them to the Maricopa County Health website, which has the list of all the pharmacies that are giving out the vaccine. And the pharmacies are typically way easier to navigate. They have their own sign-up system. They're part of the federal distribution program. Instead of having to rely on the state, they get their vaccines directly from the federal government. So they get them on a different schedule, but they usually have more appointments available, and it's way easier to navigate for seniors, in my experience, because that's what I do all day, is try to find people vaccines. So if anyone has questions about that, or has people that can't find a vaccine, send them my way. We'll see what we can do. And that's all I got.
Great, thanks, Michelle. Yeah, I know that we've heard that the elderly population trying to navigate the vaccine pathway has been a struggle. So that's actually good information to look towards the alternate sites there. They're easier. So appreciate that update.
Maricopa County also has a senior navigator as well that can help people sign up for vaccines. So there's a phone number on the Maricopa County website, the health department's website, that is actually a senior navigator that can help people sign up for a vaccine, because there's also a lot of seniors who just don't have internet. So they can call that and the people on the phone will sign them up.
Great. Great. As always, appreciate the great work both senators are doing for us here for Arizona and through all these challenging times. So I always appreciate your updates. Sally, anything else for the good of the order from the chamber side?
No, I think this was it was good. This is definitely a community issue. Trafficking isn't just the responsibility of Mesa PD or others in that world. So I think it's everybody's responsibility to be aware and to speak up when something's not right and to play our part. And I think there is a role for the chamber to play as far as being supportive of the police department and their efforts, and to really start pointing out the bad actors that we have in our city. So it's good.
Yeah, absolutely, no doubt. Sherry, anything on your side that you have?
Nope. We're good.
All right.
We'll go back to breakout rooms next time and follow up on last month, and I think it will be good.
Great. All right. With that, appreciate everyone's time today. Again, have a nice Easter weekend. The weather is getting a little warm in Arizona. We went from spring to summer. I think that spring lasted a day or two, if even that. So maybe we went from winter right to summer. So stay hydrated, stay safe. It was great seeing everybody again. Thanks, Sally, for getting this set up. This is a great speaker today, and appreciate everyone's time, and we'll see you all next month.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Stay connected to Mesa Chamber social media, email newsletters, Monday morning message, and mesachamber.org to always know what's happening at your Mesa Chamber.